Chapter 10, Confessions. Oh, please, we need this badly. I'd been a little worried about finding the opportunity to talk to Trent and poke for more information during their research time, especially considering it had yet to happen despite multiple opportunities. I was fortunate Trent seemed eager to talk, and Caleb exiled himself to a nearby table after a round of terse introductions. Perfect. I suspected the group was disappointed I'd not brought another F-class with me this time. Caleb didn't elicit quite the enthusiasm Ari had. Of course, that could be because he wasn't exactly encouraging, not with the way he was crossing his arms glaring at us.
Have I mentioned your, bodyguard today is a little unnerving? I liked Ari better.
Yes, and Ari's busy. And, for the record, Caleb is a rook. I'm certain he can hear you no matter how much you whisper. He gave Caleb a wary look. Caleb responded by raising one eyebrow and looking slightly amused. Though I was probably the only one that could tell that expression was amused. I had to bite back the laugh. I can just picture it, it's great. Trent groaned. After a moment, he gave me another sheepish look.
Morgan, do I upset you enough you need a bodyguard to come down here?
It has nothing to do with you. If I had that big a problem with you, I'd remove myself from the assignment. He didn't need to know I didn't have the authority to actually do that. Nice. For the record, I'm also still in training. Their sending someone to monitor things isn't that strange.
I suppose that's true. I just don't want you to feel you can't trust me. I really want us to...
Okay, well, thank you for interrupting.
Trent!
We both jumped when his companion snapped at us.
We've got exactly 4 days before our time here is up. It would be great if we could go 1 day without your past relationship throwing off our schedule.
I can't disagree with that.
Matt, come on. It's not like I'm not working. Besides, you heard it before. Morgan's an F-class herself. It would be helpful to actually talk to her about what it's like.
We're not trying to understand the struggles of the average Esper. Unless she wants to divulge her psi fingerprint, there's not much you can tell us that will be helpful.
I believe that information is what you call classified.
It was the first time he'd spoken since our arrival. Matt turned to glare at him.
I'm well aware that Endgame classifies all its most useful Esper research. Heaven forbid the ignorant masses understand the Esper phenomenon in a way that might actually benefit society.
You really think that's why we classify things?
Not just me. It's what many people think.
Well, they're wrong.
Are they? It would be really inconvenient for you people if the rest of us had tools allowing us to mimic your abilities, wouldn't it?
Matt, come on now. We're guests here. We don't want to cause trouble. They've been kind enough to give us access to...
Partial access. Nothing more.
I shot Caleb a look. Given what had happened overnight, Matt's anger seemed awfully pointed. I'm sure your lab also doesn't just give the public access to everything you're working on.
You people hoard information like you're afraid of something, though. It's not the same.
And what do you think we're afraid of? Well, it's not that I agree with Matt, but some people believe fairies are the natural evolution of humans. That one day we'll all possess higher levels of psi anyway. That's just stupid conspiracy theory stuff, Gina.
That's the most upset Trent's been. He gave me and Caleb an apologetic smile.
We talk about these kinds of things a lot at the lab. It's not like everyone buys into it. But clearly some of you do.
It's not like it doesn't make sense.
I'm sorry, what exactly is this conspiracy theory?
that Endgame is so afraid of what the F-class phenomenon could mean, they're trying to halt it entirely. Or just keep all information about it under wraps so they can slow it down.
I mean, if everyone is an Esper, then what happens to this organization, you know?
Is that what you believe, Trent?
I mean, it's hard to deny that the mutation is becoming more common.
Who gives a shit one way or the other? It's not like anyone can stop evolution. If humans evolve, so will Endgame. But I guess the concern you might be trying to stop it does make some people want to speed up the development. Some people. Meaning... you. No! No! We're trying to help people, that's all. That should be something Endgame is happy about. No one says we aren't.
You sure as hell don't act like it.
Wait a minute. What has Endgame done to make it seem like we're against that? Matt seemed so belligerent, specifically towards this organization. Interesting.
Look, I don't decide policy here. But helping people and hurting them are two sides of the same coin.
That goes as much for Endgame as it does for us.
That's true. And we spend a lot of time worrying about the implications of our actions on the present.
So you say.
Come on, Matt. You're the one who pointed out there isn't a lot of time to go through all this information. Maybe we should just focus for a while.
Matt didn't seem to like being reminded of that, especially not by someone who was just an intern. But at the very least, he dropped the subject and they all went back to working. Caleb took the opportunity to send me a quick message via the net.
He seems pretty touchy, doesn't he?
I noticed that. Not sure what it means.
At any rate, it's clear where he stands on the topic of wanting to get at our information. Not sure on the others, though.
Yeah. They worked several more hours before stopping for a break. Matt was the first to leave, sparing a curt nod for Caleb and me before he did. It felt like he took the tension with him.
Sorry about Matt.
She gave me a timid smile as she gathered up several displays and placed them in one of her bags.
His heart really is in the right place, but it gets frustrating when our research is stymied at every available opportunity. There are a lot of hurdles to overcome in this field of research, a lot of laws and regulations to work with. Between that and everyone being so protective of their research, it can feel like we're treading water instead of making progress. No one said we know anything that would help your little lab out.
That's true. It's not as if Caleb and I have access to the research division's work either. And there's no reason to assume anything there would be groundbreaking for your research.
But even just seeing some F-class psi waves would be a lot of help for us. I mean, there's such a small pool of subjects and they're all really low level.
That's true. Most of our pool is made up of people trying to, no offense, avoid this place.
I hope you realize you're asking for unrestrained access to people's private medical files. Unless Espers are no longer entitled to privacy.
Tell me more about how Endgame respects privacy of citizens when it's forcing people like Morgan into its ranks.
Are you...
How about you two don't argue about me like I'm not standing right here? Just a suggestion.
Sorry, Moore. I will never think that was fair.
Look, there was a lot going on at that time that you aren't aware of. And that's not even the point. Caleb is right. There's no way any organization is going to open up private medical files for public scrutiny.
I mean, I know that information is personal, but some people might not mind showing us that much. It's wishful thinking at best. And as much as I would love to stick around to argue the point, Morgan and I need to be somewhere else.
Caleb nodded and started away, motioning with his head for me to follow. Trent grabbed my arm.
Hey, any chance of dinner tonight?
For you? No. I don't even gotta think about it. I know I'm supposed to be getting, like, information out of you, but I'm not going down that train. Nope. Not when I got, like, a jealous boy who's having the time of his life, and I don't mean that in a good way, but just having an absolute time of trying to come to grips with his feelings. I'm not going out for dinner with my ex-boyfriend. Forget it. On one hand, it might be good to spend more time with Trent. So far, we didn't have anything concrete about what had happened, and spending time with him alone might afford me that opportunity. But I don't know how to ask without seeming suspicious. And I really don't think he knows anything. Matt, on the other hand, came across as more suspicious. But it wasn't Matt asking me to dinner. I shouldn't jump into this until I had a plan on how to get information out of him. I already have something scheduled. I'm sorry.
Oh, I understand. Then I'll see you tomorrow.
Of course. We left it there and I hurried after Caleb. He was right outside the archive, waiting. He fell into step beside me as we retreated. Yes, we retreated. Well, what did you think of them?
Not sure. That Matt has a chip on his shoulder.
I'll say. I wonder what his story is. It's hard to believe he's that bitter without a reason.
Who knows? And your boyfriend there.
He's my ex-boyfriend.
Excuse me. Your ex-boyfriend seems like a sincere idiot. Same for that Gina woman.
So you think Matt's the culprit? Caleb's expression darkened as we walked.
If he is sure as hell bad at acting innocent.
That's the thing. It's like 2 on the nose. That was true. Matt was clearly the most suspicious one of the group, but you'd expect him to be more subtle if he was the culprit. Still, if it wasn't him, that left Gina and Trent. Gina seemed nice, but she was also pretty keen to get a glimpse of the medical files. Ugh. A more direct approach was likely to yield better results than lurking and hoping someone dropped some useful information.
Morgan. Pardon my butting into this and changing the topic, but what's going on between you and Ari?
Oh geez, that came completely out of nowhere. Well, what do you mean by that?
I mean, hell. It's none of my business, but that guy asked me to a match of Volitant, to blow off steam. He used those words. Ari did.
I guess he's not one for blowing off steam. Volitant is a full-contact indoor sport played in an enclosed room or area. The floor is made of raised platforms of varying heights. The configuration differs based on whether you are playing one-on-one or with teams, as does the size of the room. Each player or team must obtain the ball and bounce it off designated spots on the walls, lighting them up. Once all the team spots have been lit up, they have a limited amount of time to make a goal by getting the ball into a hoop at the upper wall or on the ceiling of the opposite side of the court. Sounds pretty intense. Really?
You know how many times he's needed to blow off steam? Ever. None. Not in the entire time I've known him. And the only thing different now from the last 17 years is you. He's been on edge ever since you got here.
Is this time again? Time! Yes. It's not like
I'm not blaming you. While I had you here, I figured I'd just encourage you to work it out. For both your sakes.
Is he okay? Caleb shot me an amused grin.
Ask me that again after I wipe the floor with him later today.
Please don't beat him too badly.
I promise nothing.
So other people were also noticing that something was wrong. I really needed to talk to him. Caleb and I parted ways when we got back to the upper floors. He told me to send him my report when it was ready, and he'd attach a small addendum with his perspective on the issue. After that, I went to change out of my uniform. I opted to wait a while before sending Ari another note, since he would be meeting up with Caleb anyway. And I wanted to give him some space. For now. So I went to the lounge alone to work on my report. Oh, girl! That is a great color on you. I love it. Vaughn, it's not that funny. The lounge, as it turns out, wasn't the best place for report writing. Not when your teammates found you and started up a conversation. Which somehow ended up on the topic of your other teammate teleporting into your shower on accident. Oh god, we've got to relive this embarrassment, do we?
Are you kidding? It's hilarious!
Vaughn?
Did he see anything?
How many people do you know who wear anything in the shower? He saw everything. Right? I knew the towel was just there for my benefit. Her reaction wasn't what I expected. I imagined less laughing. She grinned at me over the top of her glass.
Lucky guy.
I am telling Mara you said that.
That's fine with me. I was going to tell her later anyway, and I'm sure she'd agree with me.
No! You're not supposed to tell anyone!
You just said you were going to tell her.
You're horrible. She laughed again and took another sip of her drink. Her expression turned thoughtful, though there was still a hint of a smile there.
So, what are you going to do about it?
I don't know. He seemed really upset. Before that, and during. Maybe I should just let it be.
If you want my take on it, I don't think that's the solution. You need to do something, even if it's just to sit down, talk about it, and end everything now.
I don't want to do that. I don't want to just end it.
Then isn't the only other option to talk about it, put your feelings out there, and try to make it work?
I wish it was that easy.
Girl, it is that easy. You have to seize the moment. Always. Let things try to work themselves out and you may lose the opportunity.
I know that much, but Ari seemed so upset by it all.
You can't deny that he's been thinking about you a lot, though.
I'm not sure what to do about this. If having me around is upsetting him this much...
Ari is not used to feeling things, Morgan. He's not upset, he's probably scared. I doubt he even knows what to do about this kind of emotion. Listen, has he told you anything about himself?
Very little.
I figured as much. He barely talks about himself.
I did notice that.
Ari's been a part of Endgame for years. Longer than any of the rest of us. He came here when he was around 2 or 3.
That seems young.
It is. For most of us, our abilities don't really surface until a little later in childhood. And we come here shortly after to join the academy. For Ari, being F-class meant abilities awakened much earlier. Much. And imagine a toddler with his abilities.
Having a toddler that could teleport around does seem like it would be... tough.
More than tough. He teleported his mother to Sierra once. On accident.
What?
She was fine in the end. But imagine. His parents couldn't begin to understand how to raise a child that could do things like that, and Endgame had never seen an Esper with that kind of ability before. His range and age aside, the method he uses for teleportation is also unusual. Fairies were very poorly understood at that time. There weren't many around yet, and no one knew much about them.
Ari said that most of what Endgame knows about F-Class they learned from him.
Because he spent most of his childhood in a lab.
That's terrible.
I'm sure it was. But it wasn't just so he could be studied, Morgan. He was dangerous. Very dangerous. He didn't know how to use or control his abilities. He used them on accident all the time. And he didn't understand the consequences of teleporting someone into orbit or into a wall. Imagine what could happen when he was upset. It's not like kids that young have much emotional intelligence. They're children. But regardless of his age, it doesn't change that he hurt people. Sometimes severely. They kept him isolated and, at some point, started suppressing his emotional responses for everyone's safety, including his own.
It was necessary, but can you imagine growing up like that?
I can't. I'd always had a large and supportive family. I couldn't fathom what it was like to grow up alone, without affection, with everyone afraid of me.
He was almost an adolescent when they began to let him interact with others. That was when the rest of us met him for the first time. And he was a disaster. He had no clue how to socialize. He didn't even understand emotions at that point. They weaned him off the suppressors over time, gradually helping him get used to controlling his abilities even with active emotional responses. But he bottles things up, even now. Back then, he had severe anxiety when overwhelmed. And he still does. I'm sure you've seen it before, too. I'm sure he's never been in love before. He flat rejected anyone interested in him and kept his distance from people that interested him. The only people he's gotten close to are people who are safe in that regard.
But he can't keep his distance from me.
He can't. And now he's so tied up in knots inside that he's unconsciously teleporting because he's thinking about you. Do you know how long it's been since he did that?
I don't know how to talk to him about this. I don't want to make it worse.
Sometimes things like this are messy. It's necessary to work through the mess and come out on the other side.
She reached across the table and took my hands, giving them a light squeeze.
Loving someone like Ari won't be easy. But that's true of most of the people here. We've all endured a lot. But I think you'll be good for him. And I think he's a good match for you, as long as you have the patience to help him through this.
Patience isn't the issue. I just don't want to hurt him.
I'm rooting for you! It took me a long time to work out how to talk to Mara about how I felt. But I managed it, Morgan. Look at us now. You'll figure it out too.
Thanks. Well, that was very helpful, Vaughn. Thank you for sharing that, because that gives me a lot of good information about everything that's going on in that Ari brain of his. Oy, poor kid. And then the conversation turned to Trent and the attack on Endgame system. I shared with her some of what happened during my earlier meeting with them, and assured her Trent had behaved himself. Kind of. As expected, many people viewed the open investigation into the Esper situation as Endgame siding with the Triad, even though that wasn't it at all. It had made the situation worse for the teams there, as now they had protests to deal with on top of everything else. There were a lot who wanted them to pull out and go home. More than that, some were questioning whether Endgame had jurisdiction on Sierra at all. A shocking turn, since Endgame's jurisdiction was accepted everywhere else, even Dione and the asteroid mining facilities. I think I read about Dione before. Yes, I do remember reading about that. The situation was becoming much bigger than anyone thought. Even on the surface, protests had cropped up. Apparently, a lot of citizens sympathized with the Sierra dissidents and were gathering in solidarity, but they had plenty of people against them as well. Some called Endgame's investigation a sham, a front for shutting down the rebellion on behalf of the Triad. Others hoped Endgame found evidence the dissidents were involved in illegal experimentation because it would give weight to the Triad's retaliation. The very idea of a ceasefire was far away at this point. With the rise in protests, the Triad was implementing stronger methods of dealing with the dissidents, and fighting was growing ever more intense. It was a mess. I had a lot to contemplate by the time I returned to my place. Ari was at the forefront of my thoughts after that talk with Vanessa. I wondered if I should send him a note, ask him if he wanted to come over for dinner, or just talk. It was ironic that I'd pulled up a message template to do just that when I got a note from Trent instead. Asking again if I would please meet him for dinner. He wanted to talk to me. I couldn't justify rejecting the offer again when this was a potential opportunity to learn more about his colleagues. Oh, sure you can. You did it once, you can do it again. Bleh. With a sort of frustrated reluctance, I responded that if he wanted to talk, we could meet in the lobby for a while. I thought he might reject it, since it wasn't the intimate dinner he wanted. I was surprised when he accepted right away. I resolved to be sure to tell him in no uncertain terms that we were over, if it came up.
It's not exactly what I was hoping for, but thanks for coming down.
I didn't have a reason to say no.
Oh? You've been trying pretty hard to avoid me. Is that not enough of a reason?
I sighed, hating how this assignment was so at odds with all the things I wanted to say in the face of that comment. I feel ya. I'm not avoiding you, but there isn't a lot of reason to spend time together outside of work. And I have a lot of other things on my plate. I'm still in the middle of an intense training program, too.
You know, earlier, Matt suggested you were only overseeing us because you were told to spy on us. Because of the Sierra conflict. Because we're from there. And maybe our research is suspicious.
Matt said that? He clearly hated Endgame, but he was that suspicious of us?
Well, he's pretty sympathetic to the cause up there. Gina and I might be from New Albion, but he was born on Sierra, so, you know. But with the way you've been avoiding me, I can't imagine that he's right.
Nice. Alright. I actually unintentionally played my cards just right. I just didn't want to hang out with you if I'm being honest, but hey, I'll take that. I wanted so much to ask more about Matt and Gina, but I could read the mood. Trent wasn't talking about Matt. I mean, he was, but that wasn't his point. He was trying to talk about us. If I derailed the subject to pepper him with questions about the others, it would definitely look strange.
You know, after everything settles on Sierra, if the dissidents win, they're saying they'll probably offer asylum to any Esper who wants it. Espers like you. Espers who want to live a normal life.
This subject again. That has nothing to do with me, though.
Have you really just accepted that you're going to be here permanently?
I didn't accept it. I decided it. I chose to be here.
Because there were no other...
I don't think this is the place to discuss this, Trent.
I guess you've already made up your mind, then.
I'm sorry. He laughed, a little sadly.
You always were the sort to just walk forward, no matter what was there in front of you. I always loved...
He swallowed hard.
I always loved that about you. I'm sorry I called you down here for no reason. I know you're busy.
No, it's alright.
I'll let you get to doing whatever. See you, Morgan.
Okay, at least he kinda handled that a little more gracefully than our other interactions with him. He left a short while later, and for a long time, I sat there, unsure what to feel. When he walked away, it was like watching the door shut on that part of my life. It hurt. It was sad. But somehow left me feeling like I was, at last, really ready to move forward. That's good, you got some closure, because before, you kind of just had to move on. He just disappeared, and you couldn't really feel the closure. Now there's some closure for you, so that's good. And after a while, I went back to my flat. Imagine my surprise when I found ARI standing outside in the hall, like he was unsure if he should knock. Were you waiting for me?
I was hoping we could talk.
You should have sent me a message.
I assumed you were with Trent.
I met with Trent in the lobby for a while. One of his colleagues was acting strange today, so I thought it might be good to try to get more information about him.
I see. And were you successful?
I learned some interesting things. It's difficult to strike a balance between prying for information but not seeming suspicious.
If you're too tired to talk, then it can wait. I'm sure you still also need to write up a report.
I'm not tired, and I also want to talk to you. Why don't you come in? I can make us some tea.
Thank you.
Ari followed me inside, but stood by the door, awkward and stiff. You can sit, you know.
Of course.
He did so, perching at the edge of the sofa, stiff and uncomfortable. I mean, considering the last time you guys saw each other, you were completely naked in the shower. It's, he's handling this better than I would.
I must apologize for what happened earlier. I am afraid it's become obvious I need more training myself. I haven't done something like that in a very long time.
I don't have room to judge when it comes to struggling with control.
Nevertheless, you must have been horrified.
I have 4 brothers. I'm used to having my privacy invaded.
I see.
Ari, I'm not angry. I was startled, of course, but I'm not horrified. I was worried about you more than anything, especially when you didn't respond to my message.
I apologize. I wasn't sure what to say. I needed time to compose my thoughts.
How was your Volitant match with Caleb?
Ah, he mentioned that.
He did.
I lost, as expected.
He shows no mercy, does he?
None whatsoever.
I took our teacups to the sofa and handed one to him. He accepted it hesitantly. Ari, are you alright? Really alright?
I should inform you that I spoke with Caleb about your training. He'll be taking over for the time being. Now that the two of you have reconciled your differences, it might be wise to focus on Rook training. It is, of course, the easiest to learn. When your focus has improved, I'll come back to teach you more about night-based skills. I've asked to be allowed to focus on the Syrah incident. I believe this will prevent me from being overly tired. We'll obviously continue to work together, and I'll help with your assignment where needed.
Oh, dang, he's pulling away. No, 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 no! I was definitely getting worried about how much you had on your plate, but that's not what I was referring to. I'm worried about you. And I know I'm the cause of some of your stress. It's not like you haven't also been a source of distraction for me.
I am? I mean, that is...
He was like, what? Aw, sweet baby.
I don't intend to be.
I don't think anyone ever intends to be. I set my cup down and, after a very brief hesitation, took his hand, though I didn't want to overwhelm him. I didn't want to talk to you about my training schedule. I wanted to talk to you about us. I don't think we can continue to pretend there isn't something going on between us. I mean, that something may be as simple as attraction. Or it might be more. I closed my eyes, taking a deep breath. I hope it's more. I hope that's what you want as well.
I am unsure. I only know that my emotions have been somewhat out of control of late where you're concerned. I believe I may be developing romantic feelings for you. That kiss from before. I apologize for leaving after that. I was unsure how to...
It was so difficult seeing him at a loss for words when he was never at a loss for words. Ari, you don't need to apologize for that. Again, I was worried about you. I don't want to do anything that upsets you or makes you uncomfortable.
You did nothing wrong. It was merely the moment I had to confront what I was beginning to feel for you. Even now, I'm unsure what to do about that feeling.
You don't have to do anything if you don't want to. We can let things develop on their own as slow or as fast as you want. I touched his face carefully, and he closed his eyes, swallowing hard. I can tell you're scared, but you don't need to be. I'm not going to force you to do anything you don't want.
I'm not frightened of you, Morgan. I've never felt this way before. I've never allowed myself to want something this strongly. The thought that my control may slip because I lose focus is ever present. And all this causes me to do and say things that I never would normally. It's disconcerting.
Emotions tend to do that.
I find myself annoyed when you spend time with Trent, even though I know it's for work. I find myself fixating on what you talked about with him. Fixating on the fact that there were moments of yours I wasn't a part of. And even I can see this level of possessiveness can't be healthy.
His words were coming out in a tumble, as if he'd been holding it all in for a long time and it was finally spilling out.
It bothers me that you have a history with him. A history that has nothing to do with me. Our history is brief, and involves me terrifying you when we first met.
It also involves you being kinder to me than anyone here, helping me through a difficult time, offering me guidance, even friendship.
Is that not the source of your feelings for me? Isn't it possible you're mistaking gratitude for something else?
No. I set my other hand on his face and made him look at me. That's not it. I know what I feel. You don't need to be jealous of Trent. Our history is different, but that's because we're different. You're the only one I'm thinking of right now, in the present. Aww. And he asked to kiss. I'm such a sucker for when the guy's like, "May I kiss you?" I'm just, ugh. My heart gets so gooey when that happens.
May I kiss you? I will not run away this time.
Yes, of course. He bent and carefully brushed his lips against mine, like an experiment, to test the waters. There was a soft sigh, a shuddering breath, before he kissed me with a little more confidence. His hand slid up my back to bring me closer. I let my hands rest against his chest, not wanting to go too fast for him. Ari pulled away for a brief moment and rested his forehead against mine. Then he cupped his hands around my face and kissed me one more time. There was more force behind this kiss, like he had realized it would be okay. It wasn't until that moment that it occurred to me just how much I'd been holding back with him, handling him like a fragile piece of glass. How afraid I was of hurting him or making a fool of myself. When that desperate bit of heat finally made its way into a kiss, a wave of relief and happiness washed over me. I realized maybe I'd convinced myself I was the only one feeling anything at all, or that he didn't actually want me. But he did. I wrapped my arms around him, letting out an involuntary murmur against his mouth as I surrendered myself to this moment. Under the tender assault of his lips, his gentle hands sliding almost timidly down my arms, trailing shivers behind them, everything else faded. That empty place in my heart that held only the echo of the life I'd led before, filled with something else. This girl likes to just use the tongue all the time. She's like, I want to take it slow, and then I use my tongue again. Go get him, girl. This is all you. You got this. I ran my tongue briefly along his lips, just grazing his. His fingers tightened against the backs of my arms, and he made a soft, wondering sound in his throat before mirroring the gesture. It didn't surprise me that he was a fast learner. Ayy. The kiss had started out halting and clumsy, but had slowed to a languid exploration as his hands moved to my back to pull me closer. Every sensation was heightened. The way his fingertips traced the curve of my spine, the way the rim of his teeth scraped over my lower lip, and his tongue slid alongside mine then pulled away. The way his soft breaths mingled with mine, the hint of a gasp or groan on every one of them. Yeah, things are heating up. It felt like a long, long time before we pulled apart, breathless and awed as we pressed our foreheads together. It was longer still before either of us spoke. Hey, nobody teleported anywhere. This is good.
I believe I should go.
I was so unsurprised to hear him say that, I almost smiled. It was better than running away without a word.
Will that be okay?
I pulled away far enough to look into his eyes. Beautiful, beautiful silver eyes. Do you have to? I mean, we said going into this kiss, we'll go as slow as he needs to. So if he's like, I need a moment to like recenter myself. I mean, we had a long languid kiss and nobody died. I think that's a win for tonight. Just take your time, boy. I'll be here. Of course it's okay. I gave him a teasing smile. I hope you didn't expect I'd tie you down and make you stay. Aw. He returned the smile with a hesitant one of his own.
I trust you haven't forgotten it's somewhat difficult to restrain a knight.
And I hope you haven't forgotten I'm a queen. His smile softened considerably when I said that.
I, of course, would never forget that.
I'm glad we talked tonight. Thank you for stopping by.
I'm also glad. I fear I may prove overly clumsy with things as they progress. I hope you'll continue to be patient with me.
And I hope you realize even people with quite a lot of relationship experience can still be clumsy with things sometimes. I don't have extreme amounts of experience either.
Strangely, that is comforting.
I leaned up and pressed another very soft kiss to his lips. And, for the record, it's always okay to need some space. I know this is all new to you.
Thank you for understanding.
Normally, I think a goodbye would have been slow or awkward, but in the end, Ari was Ari. He stood and went straight to the door without looking back. It was so very him, I had to hold in the laugh. I know, I couldn't even hold in the laugh. I was laughing. I was laughing on your behalf. It would have seemed insensitive if it was anyone else, but it was Ari, and that made it adorable. I got up and followed him, though I doubted he expected me to. He stopped outside and looked back.
I will see you tomorrow. If not before your training session, then after.
I'll see you then. He nodded, the same nod as always, before leaving me and heading down the hall to his apartment. But this time, he paused when he reached his door, glancing my way again. Another nod, and he was gone. Yee! I loved it. I loved everything about that. Yay! I bit my lip and, stomach still fluttering happily, went back into my own flat as well. It wasn't the ending I was expecting, but somehow it washed away all the other frustrations. I think I realized for the first time that I wasn't just starting to have feelings for him. The euphoria I was feeling after just one kiss and an instant goodbye? I was already in way deeper than I thought. Despite everything else, I didn't mind at all.